the radical, fundamental principles of freedom, rational self-interest, and individual rights. This is the Yaron Brook Show.
All right, welcome everybody to the Yaron Brook Show on this Tuesday night. Thank you all for joining me today. Got a lot to talk about today. Some in-depth analysis of the situation in Lebanon is coming your way. We'll talk about the greatest threats to freedom in America. We'll start with a couple of smaller topics before we get to that, though. And my big complaint is, I have to start with a complaint, right? Why am I scheduling these shows the same day as the Celtics are playing basketball? Like, the NBA season has started up again, and there's basketball on television, and I'm stuck with you guys. Anyway, so I'll be watching the scores. Can't watch the actual game, but at least I can watch the scores. They're down 12 points, which sucks, but hopefully they can make a comeback in the third and fourth quarter. Go Celtics. No, not Heat. Anyway, hope everybody's having a good time. We got to start where we got to start, right? Number one threat to U.S. national security these days is, we've talked about it the last two shows, is TikTok. So we got to start with TikTok and new news. I'll keep updating you because I think this is such an important story. I'll keep updating you on the fate of TikTok, because I know you're all interested, and you all probably have downloaded the app and watched stupid videos on it. But the big news on TikTok right now is that President Trump has changed his mind again. I mean, I'm shocked. Changed his mind again, and now is saying, well, he's going to give them until September 15th. That's 6 weeks. The other day, he was going to shut them down immediately. That day, Saturday, he was going to, special executive order, shut them down, close them down, finish them. No, now he's giving them until September 15th before he'll ban them in the United States. I guess they have to figure out by what exact power can the United States president shut down a legitimately registered company. So they've got 6 weeks to do that, to figure out the legal strategy. And he's hoping that during that period of time, they will sell. Because if they don't sell, the company, if they don't sell TikTok USA, he will shut them down. Now, what do you think that does to the price of TikTok? So basically, the president of the United States is telling TikTok, you have to sell by September 15th or we'll shut you down. Now, what are all the buyers going to do? Well, TikTok, you have no choice. You've got to sell. Got to get a cheaper price. They're going to get a cheaper price. So Donald Trump, of course, says, massive drop in valuation. So Donald Trump, of course, says he wants a cut. He says the U.S. Treasury should get a cut of the sales price. Yeah, he says, just a quote from Trump, I did say that if you buy it, whatever the price is that goes to whoever owns it, because I guess it's China, essentially. He can't, like most people, they can't separate China and the Chinese government from individuals in China, private companies in China, and so on. Now, yes, it's an authoritarian government, but there are private entities in China to the same, not the same, or to a similar extent that they are in the United States. So he continues, I said a very substantial portion of that price is going to have to come into the Treasury of the United States because we're making it possible for the deal to happen. He knows that it's only his threats that are making this possible. I mean, this is like the mafia. And then he prides himself with this. This is a point of pride for him. So he says, nobody else would be thinking about but me. But that's why I think. That's the way I think. So Microsoft is probably going to buy TikTok, going to buy it at a discount thanks to Uncle Sam. Uncle Trump is asking for a cut. Of course, the government has no authority to take a cut of a private deal. There's no mechanism for that. There's no authority for that. But, Trump speaks. You don't need authority. You don't need permission. The central planner in charge has spoken. and the central planner in charge has deemed it necessary that the U.S. government get a cut, and therefore it should get a cut. There is no legality, process. Nah, that's for wimps. All right. Michael says, that's pretty amazing. Michael says he just tried to share my post where I promoted my book on Equal is Unfair. Equal, not unequal. Equal. Typo there, Michael. On Facebook. And Facebook intervened with the declaration that the article was over 5 years old and wouldn't let him share it. That is weird. And I'm sure that wouldn't happen with just any 5-year article. Maybe they're after me. But maybe if you change the title of the book to Unequal is Unfair, then they'll let you publish it. All right. So that was a quick update on TikTok. Another quick update. Oh, I see. We've got a nice big live audience already. 6 minutes into the show. Usually takes a while to build up. But don't forget before you go that you want to like the show. Right? If you like it, like within a few minutes, then I won't bug you about it. But only 20 likes with 100 people watching, so like the show. Derek asked, what did I think of TikTok by Keisha? Key Dollar Shah? I don't know how you pronounce it. Crap. Total, another crap. Musically, aesthetically, from every perspective. I shut it down after 30 seconds. Life is too valuable. Time is too precious. My time is too precious. My ears, my musical appreciation, far too valuable than to listen to that crap. Right? If you like Keisha and if you like the song TikTok, get a life. All right. Let's see. Yes, thank you for the likes. I see it's working. Okay, I want to give you an update quickly on... I have no taste. Man, you don't know what taste is if you're like that. It's hard for me to call it music. I guess it's music, but it's just so dull. It's boring. Ugh. All right. I told you about vaccines. We talked about this a couple of days ago. We talked about vaccines. We talked about the fact that why don't, instead of doing, in a sense, 30,000 people in phase 3 clinical trials, why not use the entire, or as many people as they can vaccinate right now, as much supply as they have, get as many people vaccinated, go into production, start vaccinating everybody. Some of the vaccine will work, some of them won't. People will have to sign up because there's risk involved. One of the risks involved in this is that some vaccines will actually make you react more strongly, potentially more strongly. Bad vaccines can make you react more strongly to COVID. So only give it to people who are willing to take the risk, who are willing to do it. Don't give it to the elderly, for example. Give it to younger people, see what happens, and run the phase 3 trials on hundreds of thousands or maybe even millions or tens of millions of people. I think that would save huge amount of time. It would get the economy going again. It would get people, much more activity could be engaged. We'd get rid of a lot of the obstacles the U.S. economy has right now. And phase 2 is to secure its safety, that you're not going to die from it. You're not going to get really, really hurt badly. And the vaccine's past that. Now, what's interesting is this was proposed in an op-ed, I can't remember if it was the New York Times or somewhere else, by a scientist who said, let's vaccinate as many people as we can and use that as the phase 3. I think it was a Forbes article. Sorry, it was in Forbes, right? He did it in Forbes, not the New York Times. Basically got a huge backlash, huge, massive backlash. People wrote to him, scientists, everybody wrote to him, and he today retracted his statement. He said, no, I made a mistake. It's actually riskier, and there's not enough production, and basically wimp. I say go for it with all the risks, with all the challenges. If you don't, if it's too risky for you as an individual, I mean, it would have to go with education about the risk and have to go with people signing a liability waiver. But I say roll out the vaccines. And then today I noticed this interesting story about this group of scientists in Boston, scientists at Harvard and MIT, who are like, we don't have time to wait for this vaccine. This is bad. These are people who, taking COVID seriously, and they think it's really, really bad, and they don't want to get it, and they're scared. So basically, they formed a group, RADVAC, they're calling it, RADVAC. They formed a group, and basically, some of the grad students in this group have developed what they think is a vaccine. They haven't tested it. So they think it's a vaccine. They're basically using, in a sense, elements of the virus itself. And it's a nasal spray. Right now in development, there are 199 different COVID vaccines, 199. 5 of which are nasal sprays. Anyway, they have a nasal spray. There's a whole theory about this. I'm not going to get into the science of it. There's a whole theory of it. And they basically have a mailing list of like 70 people who've agreed to take this. And they're not charging anything. And these, I guess it's scientists, grad students, I think it's scientists, putting the vaccine together and mailing it to people. And then the person doesn't actually get the vaccine itself yet. They have to mix 2 substances, shake it, I guess, and then spray it into their nose. And they don't know how many of the 70 people have actually done it. And many of these are prominent scientists at MIT and Harvard. So these are big-time names, not trivial. And the question is that legal? And they don't know exactly, right? The idea is because they're doing it themselves, then it should be legal according to the FDA. But because they're distributing it, maybe not. Now, my view is, who the hell cares? If these guys want to create a vaccine, and if they give it to their friends, I don't care who they give it to, they produce it, they get to decide who gets it. Because there are all these ethical dilemmas. Well, but they're privileged, quote, that anti-concept, privileged, because they have a talent, ability, and a lab, and they can create this, and we can't. So we're at a disadvantage. Fine, so what? If you have an advantage, why not take it? They're not doing it at my expense. I'm not worse off because they're better off. And they're giving it to their friends and family. Great, good for them. Now, I don't know if it'll work, and there's risks involved, but these are all smart people. Why would anybody object to this? But of course, people are going to. In an egalitarian world in which everybody has to get everything at the same time, people are going to object to this, just like they're going to object to whatever mechanism we have to distribute vaccines. There will be objections to it because not everybody will be able to get it at the same time. And I think it's pretty cool. I think it's pretty cool that scientists can figure this out. They've got the genome of these all biologists, the genome of the vaccine. They figure out quick, make it home, kitchen variety vaccine for the virus, and they're injecting it. And they're taking this whole phenomena seriously. So they're taking the whole COVID thing seriously, not like some people. And as a consequence, they want to get vaccinated. So they are. Homemade vaccines. Somebody says, what percent of Super Chat do I get? I think 95. TikTok on our remaining freedoms. Yes. Left and right, destroying our freedoms. We'll get to that in a little while. All right, these other questions we are going to hold for later. Because they're off topic. All right, just a reminder about Super Chat. Right, Super Chat, you can ask Super Chat questions on YouTube. So those of you on Facebook, you want to ask a question, come on over to YouTube. There's more action on the chat anyway, though sometimes it gets really, really, really weird. But there's a lot of action on the chat, and you have the ability to ask Super Chat questions and interact with others. Super Chat questions at $20 or more get priority. So if you want to bump your question up, $20 or more. Generally, I answer Super Chat questions on the topic at hand before I go to general questions, unless it's a 20 or more question. Of course, if it's $50 or $100 or $500, or like we had the other day, almost $700, those questions will get super priority even in the middle of another topic. So, use the Super Chat feature. It's great for asking questions. Also great just to support the show. Of course, you can support the show other ways as well, and I urge you to do so. You can support the show on yaronbrookshow.com/support. What was it? Subscribestar, Patreon, and Locals. And, of course, by subscribing on those channels, you subscribe monthly, and it's great for me because then I have a sense of how much money is coming month after month after month. Super Chat is noisy. Lots of noise on the Super Chat. Lots of ups and downs from show to show. All right. Of course, don't forget, we're getting a shrinking number of people who are not subscribers listening. So it used to be 60-40. Now we're down to 70-30. Now that's not good. It's not good. Part of that happened for good reasons, because a lot of the unsubscribers subscribed, and that's good. That's cool. But you see, I want lots of unsubscribers to listen to the show, because that means new people. That means people who don't listen every week. That means people who are not there all the time. And the way to get more unsubscribers to listen to the show is for you to share it. So go out and share the show. Short shows, long shows, just share it with your friends on different social media. And maybe they'll share it. And that's how we'll get this rolling. That's how we'll turn this into something more viral. That's how we'll turn this into a bigger thing. So share, right? So we covered the like, we covered the subscribe, we covered the share, and we covered the support. So I think we've covered everything I'm supposed to cover for marketing purposes. Right? All right, let's talk about Lebanon. I've got a lot to say about Lebanon, so I don't know. This might go in more depth. Hopefully, I think you'll find this interesting because I have some personal stories about Lebanon. No hitchhiking stories in Lebanon. Didn't do any hitchhiking in Lebanon, but I've been there, so we'll talk about that. Massive explosion today in Beirut, in the capital of Lebanon. Huge explosion. I mean, on a scale, hundreds of people. 78 people are dead so far, but they fear that the number of dead will ultimately be hundreds. They've already got 2,000 to 3,000 wounded, and again, the number could be significantly higher. We don't yet know the cause. We don't yet know what exploded, but I think my initial theories are consistent with what news reports coming out of Beirut are suggesting, and that is that one of these warehouses that had massive amounts of armaments, potentially missiles, bombs, gunpowder, whatever, guns, bullets, and all this stuff, confiscated, or maybe just storage, or it was in the port. I don't think it was a ship that blew up. It looks like it was indeed a warehouse. Ooh, we've got somebody in Arabic writing on the Super Chat with lots of bombs in between. Somebody who knows Arabic, I'd be curious what he's saying. The whole thing blew up, and if you know Lebanon, then the Lebanese population is very well armed, and indeed the Hezbollah, which is the strongest military force within Lebanon, is constantly getting supplies, constantly getting weapons, bombs, missiles, a variety of different armaments. But I'm sure there are other militias in Lebanon who also are getting firearms. There is no question that there is a huge amount of just weaponry and, in a sense, gunpowder all over Lebanon. But you would expect at the port they unload ships, maybe from Iran, maybe from other places in the Middle East, maybe Syria, unloading quantities of munitions, storing them in warehouses. Maybe it's confiscated. Maybe some of this is illegal. Maybe it belongs to the Lebanese army. Probably belongs to Hezbollah. Again, they're the largest military force, larger, or at least more powerful, maybe not larger, but more powerful by far than the Lebanese army. And in a place where you've got these kind of massive quantities of armaments in the middle of a city, an explosion like this is not surprising. It is devastating, and we'll get to why it's particularly devastating right now. But it looks like an accident, but maybe it wasn't. Maybe this explosion is to distract from the real tragedy in Lebanon, which is an economical political collapse. Lebanon is on the verge of becoming basically a failed state, on the verge of complete collapse. Because, and we'll get to why. So, Lebanon, which, in the 1960s, 50s, 60s, even early 70s, Lebanon was Switzerland, Paris. Lebanon was Switzerland of the Middle East. Beirut was the Paris of the Middle East. It was a secular place. It was a party place. It was filled with lights. It was just an incredibly lucrative place. A lot of wealthy people lived there. The best banks, the most successful banks, most admired banks in the Arab world. Most admired banks in the Arab world were in Lebanon. Huge amounts of money flowed in and out of Beirut, and it was thriving. It was thriving. It was a truly amazing place, and really Western. The Lebanese people have always been, or traditionally, in Beirut at least, fairly secular. There have been a big part of Lebanese population is Christian, at least in the past. Many of those Christians have left. Maronite Christians, although there are other Christian sects in Lebanon as well. I think there are 4 different Christian sects in Lebanon. Very influenced by France, very influenced by French culture, a connection to France going back to the 19th century, really back to the Napoleonic era. Lebanon was part of the Ottoman Empire, but had connections to France. Now, just in terms of I've been to Beirut. I was in Beirut in 1983 as part of the Israeli army. Beirut, Lebanon generally. Lebanon, I drove around Lebanon, the southern part of Lebanon, the mountains there. Lebanon is a beautiful country. I mean, truly a beautiful country. Lebanon is where God's side is from. That's right. God is from Lebanon. So is Nassim Taleb. For those of you who know Nassim Taleb, Nassim Taleb is from Lebanon. God's side is from Lebanon. Many people are many very successful people who live there. One of the richest people in a number of the richest people actually in Brazil from Lebanese descent. Lebanese. I think the family in Mexico. It's a family in Mexico. The very wealthy family in Mexico. There's a very wealthy family in Mexico that's of Lebanese descent. So there is a massive number of very successful Lebanese outside of Lebanon. Lebanon, again, was very secular, very prosperous. And when I drove around Lebanon, it's just a beautiful country. Mountains. This is why it was called Switzerland of the Middle East. Beautiful mountains, villages tucked into cliffs, very remote, windy little roads going up mountains. Beirut, when I was there, was of course bombed to smithereens. There was almost, it was just horrific, the state in which Beirut was when I was there in 1983. But generally a beautiful city on the slope of a mountain with a bay and a big port and an airport by the beach, and just a gorgeous country and a gorgeous city. And one could only imagine, and I've seen pictures of what Lebanon looked like in the 1950s, 60s, 70s, before the Lebanese Civil War, which started in 1975. And I'm going to give you a brief history of the Lebanese modern history, because I think to understand what's going on in Lebanon, to understand the economic collapse that they're facing, to understand the complete dysfunction of their politics, you have to know something about the history. In 1970, Jordan had enough of the hundreds of thousands of Palestinian refugees who were living at that time in Jordan. These are refugees who had escaped from Israel either during the Israeli War of Liberation in 1948 or during the Six-Day War, which was initiated by the Arab states. War of Liberation was initiated by the Arab states as well. They fled there, and many of them fled and were living in refugee camps in Jordan. Jordan, of course, originally during the British Mandate was supposed to be part of this big Palestine. And it was split, in a sense, at some point by the British into a Jewish state, which was supposed to be west of the Jordan, and an Arab state east of Jordan. Then it was split even further. But anyway, Jordan became the home of the Palestinians, hundreds of thousands of them, in these refugee camps. And they would launch terrorist attacks into Israel. They were threatening the king, King Hussein, at the time of Jordan. They were threatening the internal politics. They were threatening everything about, and there was a real risk of a civil war within Jordan. So Jordan decided to get rid of its Palestinian refugees, and they basically launched, in September of 1970, they launched what has become to call Black September, and there was a terrorist group named Black September, come to called Black September. In September of 1970, they basically kicked the Palestinians out. And the Palestinians left Jordan, and they basically went to Beirut. They went to Lebanon. Most of them settled on the western side of Beirut, near the sea, in massive refugee camps. Two of them became very famous later on, Sabra and Shatila. And hundreds of thousands of Palestinian refugees were now in Beirut. But you see, the troublemakers among them continued to make trouble, just as they had in Jordan. They were launching terrorist attacks against Israel, and they were fighting within, and they wanted to gain political control in Lebanon, and they just were creating angst and problems and disintegration, which ultimately led to an all-out civil war in Lebanon in 1975. Now, you have to understand Lebanon, you have to know a little bit more about its history. So one more step backwards. After the Ottoman Empire was defeated, France had basically took control over Lebanon and Syria. The British took control of much of the rest of the Middle East. And France tried to set up, the idea was you take control of these countries, and then over time, right? Over time, the idea was to let these countries become independent countries. So the French set up a system of government in Lebanon. Now, Lebanon is comprised of 4 Christian sects. I think it's 12 different Muslim sects, and a sect called the Druze, which is neither Christian nor Muslim nor Jewish. No, it's just the Druze, which is a secret religion. And there are quite a few Druze in Lebanon. And historically, the Christians and the Muslims were about equally populated. Today, the Christian population is quite smaller, and the Muslims dominate. But in those, so the way the French did it is by tribes. So they basically said, this is a tribe of people. We'll give each tribe a little bit of power, and that'll create some stability, which is, I mean, the French should have gone and studied the Federalist Papers, and they would discover the fatal flaw in what they were doing. So this is the way Lebanese politics is structured to this day. The president of Lebanon is always a Christian. The prime minister is always a Sunni Muslim. The Speaker of the House, the Speaker of Parliament, is always a Shiite Muslim. So you get the supposed balance of power. You get a prime minister who's a Sunni, balanced out by the Speaker of the Parliament, which is a Shiite, balanced out by a president who is a Christian. And of course, now the Palestinians want to control, and there was this massive war. And now the country, and Parliament itself is structured around the sects. So Parliament, a certain percentage of Parliament is allocated to the Jews, who are very powerful in Lebanon, to the Shiites, to the Sunnis, and to the Christians. So it's all based on tribal balancing act. And of course, now the Palestinians were this new tribe in this tribal situation. And in 1975, they wanted more political power, they wanted more influence, and a civil war broke up. But the civil war soon fragmented into not the Palestinians versus everybody else, but into the Palestinians versus the Christians versus the Muslims versus the Jews. And every year, there would be a reshuffling of the decks. Sometimes the Jews were allied with the Christians against the Muslims and the Palestinians. Sometimes Palestinians were allied with the Christians against the Jews and the Muslims. You can think of all the different combinations. They all happen at some point. Indeed, during this history, I remember there were times when it was the Jews who called the Syrians to come in and occupy Lebanon to help them out. Sometimes the Christians called the Syrians in to occupy Lebanon to help them out. And sometimes it was the Muslims calling in the Christians and the Syrians. And the Syrians occupied occupied parts or all of Lebanon, basically from the late 1970s all the way until 2005. There was a Syrian occupation in Lebanon, on and off. Go in, out, in, out, in, out, in, out. So this complete nuttiness, no religious melting pot, separate everybody into these tribes, and then unleash the Palestinians on them that creates a massive, basically warfare. Now, on top of that, the Palestinians weren't satisfied with having created a civil war within Lebanon, and to some extent, the Palestinians kind of ignited the fuse and then let everybody else fight. And what the Palestinians do, they amassed an army on the southern border of Lebanon with Israel, and they started regularly terrorist attacks against Israel, bombarding artillery. They actually had artillery. And attacking Israel regularly. 1977, yes. Israel went in, and cleaned house a little bit and pushed them away and then retreated back. But didn't stop the Palestinians. Indeed, from 1977 until 1982, the Palestinians amassed an even greater army on the northern border of Israel and the southern border of Lebanon. And you got this constant conflict on the southern border and a civil war going on in the middle. And Lebanon was just a disaster. By the way, in spite of this, somehow the Lebanese economy kept going because the Lebanese are hardworking people and quite entrepreneurial and industrious. And somehow there wasn't mass starvation. Now, they also got a lot of money flowing in from the Saudis and the Qataris and the Kuwaitis. And they got a lot of support from their Arab neighbors. A lot of history, guys, but bear with me, right? Now, in 1982, Israel had had enough of this constant bombardment, constant terrorist attacks, constant harassment on its northern border, and basically invaded Lebanon. And while most analysts were expecting them just to take the southern portion of Lebanon, they went all the way to Beirut and occupied portions of Beirut and were actually ready to invade West Beirut and to take out the Palestinians, kill Yasser Arafat, take out all his troops and everything like that. But was stopped by an American administration, the Reagan administration. Ronald Reagan stopped the Israelis, basically secured the freedom of Yasser Arafat, gave him a free pass. There's a famous photo in Israel of Yasser Arafat in the crosshair of a sniper, and he can't pull the trigger because Ronald Reagan had secured Yasser Arafat's free passage out of there. I was in Beirut a few months before that happened, so when Israel was still in the process, indeed, I was part of the team that was planning the invasion of West Beirut, the invasion of, we were gathering intelligence for the invasion of West Beirut. And, of course, that never happened. Arafat gets out. Ultimately, Israel withdraws from most of Lebanon, stays in southern Lebanon until the year 2000 when it withdraws completely from Lebanon. That's for a different story, for a different time. But important note is that as part of this deal that Ronald Reagan cut and was trying to establish peace in the Middle East, like every American president tries to do, not only did it secure U.S. off its retreat, in order to secure peace, in order to stop the civil war, Ronald Reagan sent Marines to Lebanon with the hope of being peacekeepers. And in a tragic day in 1983, the Marine barracks were bombed. A car bomb by an Islamist rammed through the Marine gate, I guess, drove into the barracks, and 241 Americans, 241 young American kids died. And in many respects died for nothing. Reagan should have never sent troops there. What were they doing there? But what's interesting is that attack was really the launch of a new movement in Lebanon. And that movement was Hezbollah. Hezbollah is a Shiite Muslim, and I don't have time here to describe the difference between Shiite Islam and Sunni Islam, but it is a Shiite movement backed by the Iranians. Iran is a Shiite country, backed by the Iranians. And really the first major terrorist attack that Iran launched against the United States, other than taking the embassy in 1979, was the bombing of the Marine barracks in Lebanon, in Beirut, in 1983. And Hezbollah, that launched Hezbollah. Reagan didn't launch Hezbollah. Hezbollah would have happened anyway. But there's no question that the first terrorist attack Hezbollah ever launched, the bonding event for Hezbollah, was the bombing of the barracks. That's just a fact of history. In an example of pathetic foreign policy, Ronald Reagan not only sent the troops there, they got killed, but then he gave this famous speech. He was very good at speeches, where he said, oh, we're going to hunt them down, we're going to track them down, we're going to kill them, we're going to destroy them, whoever did this to them, they're going to be, hunted down for the rest of their lives. Well, yeah, right. They lobbed a couple of bombs from a Sixth Fleet out of the Mediterranean into the Bekaa Valley, which is in East Lebanon. I don't know who they killed, if they killed anybody. And the United States basically just put its tail between its legs and ran. If you ever read Bin Laden, which I did, I read Bin Laden after 9/11, used to read his diatribes. One of the reasons he believed, justifiably I think, that the United States was a paper tiger was because of how quickly they ran from Beirut. And that was Ronald Reagan, a tough Ronald Reagan. Again, all historical facts. No consequences for the Iranians for having organized this. Never any consequences for Hezbollah. Hezbollah went on during the 1980s to kidnap and murder Americans on a regular basis in the Middle East. Hezbollah has bombed the Jewish Community Center and embassy, Israeli embassy in Argentina. It has committed terrorist attacks all over the world, in Europe, in Bulgaria, all over the place. It's been designated a terrorist organization by the United States, Canada, Germany, Britain, Argentina, and Honduras. Israel has fought at least 2 wars with Hezbollah in the 2000s on its southern border. Hezbollah has done what the PLO did in the 1970s. It has basically built an army with missiles, thousands and thousands of missiles, now ever more sophisticated missiles, all funded by the Iranians on its southern borders. The United States has never penalized Hezbollah for the Americans that they murdered. Iran has never been penalized for the Americans that they murdered. Yes, I said Hezbollah is Shiite. And Hezbollah became this dominant force in, let me see, where's this one said? Find the right article. That's not it. That is not it. There's another one hiding here somewhere. All right. Basically, there it is. Found it. In 1989, when the Civil War was over, and in 1989, there was a supposedly peace deal within Lebanon to kind of, so they'll never have a civil war again. And what they required was that all the militia, all the different Christian militias, and all, by the way, and there wasn't just one Christian militia, there were multiple Christian militias with different alliances and different, just a mess in Lebanon. All the militias in Lebanon, all the different militias in Lebanon agreed to disarm and basically to hand over security of the country to the Lebanese army and police force, except for one militia, and that was Hezbollah. Hezbollah has become since then really the strongest military force in Lebanon. It has, in recent years, it has sided with the regime of Bashar al-Assad in Syria and has fought on the side of the Syrian army in Syria and has developed improved their skills, gotten better weapons, improved their fighting skills. Just a very, very, very dangerous organization, and committed to ultimately establishing a Shiite republic in Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, uniting with Iran, creating something across the entire Fertile Crescent, and ultimately taking out Israel. That is their goal. It has been from the beginning. Thank you, A.J. Cook. That is very, very generous. Appreciate it. Now, one other little element before we get to why Lebanon is bankrupt right now. In 2005, the prime minister at the time was a man named Rafik al-Harari. Rafik al-Harari was was a billionaire, or at least worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Very successful Lebanese entrepreneur. And his family was very, very politically well-connected. Prime minister means he was a what? You should know this by now. There should be a quiz afterwards. If he was president, he would be a Christian. But he wasn't president. He was prime minister, which means he would be a Sunni Muslim. Rafik al-Harari, who was perceived as a modernizer, was perceived as an enemy of Hezbollah, an enemy of the Syrian regime, somebody who was going to bring Lebanon into the 21st century and spend a lot of his own money, do something big on a grand scale, and return Lebanon to its heyday of the 1950s and 1960s, when Lebanon was just a flourishing, fun place. Well, in 2005, he got into his car, and it blew up, and he was murdered. Now, there was strong evidence that Syria was behind the murder, and that Syria basically paid Hezbollah to kill him. Not that they needed to pay him, because Hezbollah wanted him dead too. Harari was clearly an enemy of Hezbollah. Hezbollah is an Islamist, Shiite, everything that's anti-modernity, anti-progress, anti-freedom, anti-everything good. So they murdered him. Okay, fast forward, I know I'm jumping around time-wise, but fast forward to today. Well, it turns out that this week, a UN-backed special tribunal will be basically giving a verdict on a trial in absentia, of course, because they couldn't get these guys, for Hezbollah operatives who they accuse of killing Harari. It just happens to be this week, a week in which the economy is completely collapsing and a week in which this thing just blew up. So who knows if this explosion was accidental or not, given that there's a lot of interest in diverting attention from the economy, from the verdict. It's a weird time. Hezbollah in the recent decade has gained significant political power in Lebanon, basically because if you have the guns, you have political power. They've actually, funnily enough, but not funny if you know Lebanon. If you know Lebanon, this isn't funny or ridiculous or unexpected. Teamed up with Harari's son, Saad al-Harari, and who formed a government with them in 2011, right? 6 years after his father was killed from them. But that never stopped. In Lebanon, you form alliances all the time. Since 2012, basically Hezbollah has dominated the Lebanese government. The president of Lebanon today, a guy named Michael Aoun, is a Christian, but he's the only Christian commander, if you will, only Christian of note, who is friendly to Hezbollah. In other words, Hezbollah is the dominant player by far in Lebanon, militarily and politically. Now, in spite of the fact that they are a minority in the country, Shiites are a minority. They are far outnumbered by the Sunnis, and I think the Christians outnumber them as well. So here we are in this mess. Now, the bombing today is on the background of the fact that the Lebanese government is bankrupt. It is defaulted, literally bankrupt. It has defaulted on its debt that was denominated in dollars. It cannot pay back its bonds. It cannot fund its budget. With COVID and the economic consequences of COVID, the Lebanese economy is a disaster basket case. Unemployment is well over 25%. The Lebanese central bank has basically been running a pyramid scheme for the last few years. The black market in Lebanon has exploded. The currency has been depreciated by 85%. Think about, it is the only country in the Middle East that has hyperinflation. Inflation is way over 50%. 50% of the Lebanese population right now is defined as below the rate of poverty. There's a significant number of families that are on the verge of starvation. Lebanon, one of the richest, most prosperous, most amazing places in the world 60 years ago, is today a complete and utter basket case because of the tribal infighting and the radicalism of Hezbollah and willingness of the rest of the Lebanese to put them down. Since October of last year, since October 2019, there have been massive demonstrations in the street. Demonstrations that have, for the first time, maybe since the 1960s, have united all the warring tribes. So in the streets of Lebanon, you will see Christians and Sunnis and Shiites and Druze and others demonstrating against this government, demanding this government fold, demanding better governance, demanding a fundamental systematic change in Lebanon. In the past, when Lebanon has gotten into trouble, the Saudis or the Americans or the French have bailed them out. The Iranians can't bail them out because the Iranians don't have the money, too poor themselves. The Saudis won't bail them out because bail them out at this stage would bail out Hezbollah, which is an ally of Iran, which is an enemy of Saudi Arabia. The Qataris have their own problems with Saudi Arabia. They're not wasting money on Lebanon. The French and the Americans won't bail them out because they have declared Hezbollah a terrorist organization, yet the government right now is dominated by Hezbollah. In other words, they're not getting any welfare from anybody. They're not getting any help from anybody because of this financial crisis. Literally, you know, MMT, this modern monetary theory, claims that governments that print their own money never go bankrupt. Well, here's an example of a country that's going bankrupt, printing its own money. Because its debt is often denominated not in its own currency. Now, MMT does say the debt needs to be denominated in your own currency. But the country is bankrupt it has no industry anymore. It basically is a shell of what it used to be, and unbelievably tragic. As now, Lebanon is in a far better position in terms of, the buildings, the infrastructure than it was when I was there in 1983, but it is far poorer. All those years in the Civil War, they still could make money. They still could somehow trade. They still could do stuff. Nothing. All of that has been destroyed. And all destroyed. Now note that some people in Lebanon are very rich. Very rich. Hezbollah is not suffering. The Harari family is not suffering. Why is that? Because these governments in Lebanon have been unbelievably corrupt, funneling tens of billions of dollars to the well-connected. This is cronyism on steroids. This is the mixed economy in all its ugliness. Hezbollah has money. The rich and powerful in Lebanon have money. But 50% of Lebanese are below the line of poverty. Country is in disarray. And now you get this bomb. And is this bomb an attempt to distract from the verdict coming down from this UN court? Not that I'm a big fan of UN courts. Is it an attempt to distract from the economic mayhem and use this to impose some kind of emergency measures? Although it's still not clear who would fund those emergency measures and how the government could even sustain them. Or is it to attract international altruistic sympathy? Because you know what? After the bombing, your favorite president, yes, your president, my president, in spite of the fact that I didn't vote for him, our president, has offered to support and help the Lebanese people and to send money. Israel is offering humanitarian aid. Israel always offers humanitarian aid to the Lebanese whenever there's a crisis, whenever there's a problem. It offered humanitarian aid to the Syrians during the Civil War. It always offers humanitarian aid. Suicide. So this is a super chat question about humanitarian aid. It's suicide. Any humanitarian aid that goes to Lebanon is going to help Hezbollah. Any humanitarian aid that goes to Lebanon will be sucked up into the corrupt political system that they have. What Lebanon needs now is a revolution. It needs a revolution that defangs Hezbollah. It needs a revolution that completely eviscerates the existing political structure. It needs a revolution that gets away from the tribalism of the political structure that it has today. It needs a revolution that establishes a relatively free political system. It needs a secular revolution that allows Beirut to become the Paris of the Middle East again. Andrew says, wasn't that the aim of the Arab Spring movement? Would it have made a difference if Obama had supported it, or was it doomed to fail? It was doomed to fail for a variety of reasons. And to a large extent, Obama did support it. He did support it. He supported it strongly in Egypt. And all that support did was hand over the Arab Spring in Egypt to the Muslim Brotherhood, who were always behind the Arab Spring in a sense, because they were always the politically dominant force in Egypt. Muslim Brotherhood, our worst enemies. Obama did support the Arab Spring, and it led to a civil war in Syria. The only country in which the Arab Spring actually had a positive impact is Tunisia. There was an Arab Spring in Lebanon. It didn't go anywhere. It didn't go anywhere. And the reason it didn't go anywhere is Hezbollah. Now, the reason Hezbollah has not been defeated, crushed, eviscerated, eliminated, is because of Israel's weakness and Israel's unwillingness to engage and actually take them on and actually destroy them. That's what should have happened in the various wars and skirmishes that have happened over the years. Maybe an Israel-Lebanese alliance to destroy Hezbollah would work, although Israel was burnt because when it invaded in 1982, it was an Israeli-Christian alliance. that later turned against Israel and didn't really work for Israel. But yes, what Lebanon needs is a complete change. And maybe this explosion will bring that about. We'll see what caused it. We'll see if it was purposeful. We'll see if it was an accident. It's probably an accident. But it might have been caused, and I've given some reasons why there's some people who would like attention diverted from what is going on right now in Lebanon. All right. Wow, 265 live views on YouTube. We've got some live views on Facebook as well. All of you, Facebook and YouTube, please like the show if you've liked it so far. If you've got something out of it, learned a little bit of history, learned something, please like the show. Let's get those like numbers up after I mind you always. Those of you, and I'm sure there are quite a few of you now, that are not subscribers to the Yaron Brook Show, please subscribe. Press the subscribe button. You can also, if you press the bell button, anytime I go live, you will get a notification when I go live. And in addition to that, those of you who get a value out of the show, please support the show. You can do so through Super Chat. We got a nice contribution from AJ Cook earlier on the Super Chat, so thank you, AJ. And you can do that through yaronbrookshow.com/support. You can do it on Patreon. You can do it at Subscribestar. You can support the show in a variety of different ways. But please don't forget to like the show while you're here before you leave. So, that is what's going on in Lebanon. The real tragedy on top of the explosion and the hundreds of deaths potentially, although last time I looked was 78, the thousands of injured, is that the Lebanese economy is in shambles. And the Lebanese people have been put down by their own government. A government that has been too cowardly for decades now to put down Hezbollah. Hezbollah created under the watch of Ronald Reagan, who himself, you could say, was too cowardly to put them down. Hezbollah has thrived under the watch of an Israeli army that could put them down and should and has every moral and political justification to put them down and won't. A Hezbollah funded by the enemy of the United States, Iran. A Hezbollah funded and supported by every bad regime out there. Sage asked if the bomb was set up on purpose. I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. But it could be. It could be. I think it was an accident. I think that's probably the most likely scenario. It was a warehouse full of explosives, probably Hezbollah explosives. But it could have been somebody trying to sabotage the Hezbollah. It could have been somebody trying to sabotage some other militia. It could have been Hezbollah blowing it up because the weapons didn't belong to it. It belonged to some other militia. It's hard to tell. In Lebanon, it is hard to tell who's who, who's fighting who, who's killing whom, when, what, why. It is a complete and utter disaster. And I'm hoping you got a little flavor of that from what I could do. I could do several hours on Lebanon easily. Somebody asked related to this, how complete is your 5-part history of the Middle East made in early 2000s? Is there any other podcasts that are updated to current events in 2020? Well, first, I definitely would listen to that 5-part history of the Middle East. You get a real scan. Now, how complete it is? Of course not complete. It can't be complete. We're talking about 2,000 years of history done in, 5 hours? So it was described as a short history of the Middle East. There are very long histories of the Middle East, right? That was a short history of the Middle East. But I highly recommend it. It's available for free on YouTube. Just put History Middle East Yaron Brook and you'll get it. It's audio only, but it is available on YouTube and on podcasting apps. And if I say so myself, you're not going to find a better short history of the Middle East than that. Anyway, there's a better long history of the Middle East, but not a better short. There's also a history of Islamic totalitarianism, which I also did during that period, which is also, I think, awesome. And also something very different than anything else you'll see anywhere else. Again, you won't find a better source for short history of Islamism, of radical Islam, of political Islam, of jihadism, however you want to call it, than that course that I did. And again, that's available for free on YouTube and on podcasting apps, so you can access all of that. Now, have I updated it? Yes, there are podcasts in which I've updated elements of it. So I've done a number of shows on Iran. Just put Yaron Brook show in YouTube. Put Yaron Brook show Israel, which updates issues around Israel. So I've updated specific events from the long history. I haven't done a systematic update, and I don't expect ever to do that. Those shows were done in a period where I was completely focused on the Middle East because of 9/11. That's what I was reading. That's what I was obsessed about. That's what I was speaking about. That's what I was doing. That's what I was writing about. I've got essays on that topic. So it was really the area of focus. Today, that's not my area of focus. So I don't ever expect to really update that. Somebody else will have to update that if interested. But I encourage you to read that. I think you'll get a lot out of it. All right, let me do a couple of super chat questions, and I'll leave the rest to the end. I don't think I got any above $20, so any big ones to justify jumping the queue. Your thoughts on the claim publicly traded companies are anti-ethical to capitalism because becoming public, caring about value of stock over product? No, I mean exactly the opposite. Publicly traded companies are an essential part of capitalism, and I've got a whole course on this as well. So if you go and you put in Yaron Brook show, The Corporation, I think there's a 4 or 5 part course on corporations, why publicly traded companies are a good thing, a valuable thing, an important thing. A product was never the primary end of capitalism. The primary end of capitalism is profit. What publicly traded companies do is they translate profit into shareholder wealth, which just means owner wealth. So publicly traded companies are wonderful things. There's a lot of misunderstanding about them in libertarian circles and in leftist circles and so on, but they're wrong. By the way, after I do a few super chat questions, we are going to look at the biggest dangers to freedom in America today. So I'm going to put up a list of like 23 things, and we're going to rank them. You can offer your own rankings. Can you see that Biden would blame COVID and Trump and capitalism for their socialist policy failings, like Obama blamed W for slow financial recovery? Yeah, so, I mean, Biden's going to be terrible. Biden's going to be horrible. Biden's going to be just one of the worst presidents ever. I'm not pro-Biden. Right? And by the way, if Biden blames Trump, he'll be right for slow economic recovery. Because Trump created the largest deficits in American history. Trump spent like there's no tomorrow, even before COVID. Trump ignored COVID and caused COVID to become a massive crisis above and beyond anything one could expect. Trump is being a disaster of a president. So yes, anybody should blame Trump for the state of the economy in the future because it'll be true. It will be Trump's fault. Now, Biden is a horrible human being and will be a horrible president. I just think that strategically, for the long term, to save America long term, Trump has to be defeated in a landslide. Not even a little bit, in a landslide. Not because I'm pro-Biden. I hate Biden. And I might, I'm not going to vote because I can't. But even if I could vote, I'm not sure I could vote for Biden. I just certainly wouldn't vote for Trump. All right, last Trump question. How can Trump cut off everyone's unemployment right before the election? Well, he didn't cut off everybody's unemployment, and it wasn't Trump. It's really Congress. So, this is one time why I'm not blaming Trump. Trump's made a big strategic mistake. You see, what happened was that the Democrats put together a stimulus package back in May, a $3 trillion stimulus package that had an extension of unemployment benefits into the future. And Trump basically ignored that, and the Republicans ignored it. And they ignored it because they thought that the economy would reopen, we'd get a V-shaped recovery, and everything would be fine, and they wouldn't have to do a stimulus package. And they would just tell the Democrats to shove it. And if they did do a stimulus package, it would be smaller, and it would be focused, and it would just be focused on the cronyism for their friends. What happened was coronavirus didn't go away. Opening up the economy backfired. And everybody's shutting down the economy again now. And now the unemployment insurance is running out, and yet the economy is not recovering at the speed that they expected it to. And the economy might be in big, bad shape come November. And now suddenly Trump needs the economy to be in better shape, or at least he needs people to feel better about it. So he wants a stimulus package. Now, the whole idea of a stimulus package, none of this stuff stimulates the economy. There's no stimulant here. But put that aside. It's padding people's pockets to make them feel like they've got money, right? Feel like they've got money. And now Trump wants this, and he's trying to get it passed quickly. Democrats now holding him up, and they're trying to negotiate, because Democrats don't have any incentive now to pass a package that might make people feel better before the election. They want people to feel awful before the election, so they vote Trump out. You can see how politics trumps economics. Election calculus trumps economics. That was why Trump delayed, which turned out to be a massive 4D chess error. And now it's going to be very difficult for him to recover. And now all the cards are held in the Democrats' hands. And Democrats are going to drag this out so that the economy does as badly as possible towards the elections. That's politics. That is politics for it. And that's why we're not getting the unemployment. And it's not that they cut unemployment. It's that they didn't renew the expanded unemployment by $600. All right, let's see. Somebody says, thoughts on Arthur Chu's tweet insulting Ayn Rand? I haven't seen that tweet, so I don't have any thoughts. Are you aware that Derek denied me from Facebook group designed to promote your show? No, but it's not my Facebook page designed to promote the show. I don't think that's the Facebook page. I think the only page, the Facebook page that Derek created was the Facebook page designed for not to promote the show, but designed to promote young people with ideas about how to launch a revolution, how to change the world. And I have no say in that. I've never seen the Facebook page. I have no involvement in it. I have no say about it. So sorry, I'm not involved. My Yaron Brook show, Derek doesn't have the authority to deny anybody from. So Yaron Brook show Facebook page, I think you're on that Facebook page, and if you're not, you could get on. I'm not gonna. I purposefully did not want to get involved. I purposefully did not want to get involved in. I didn't want to get involved in that thing I did for young people. I wanted to unleash it and let people do their own thing. Derek says he does not run it anymore, so message him and he'll add you. So there you go. I don't know. I guess that is the solution. He's not speaking on my behalf. Derek does some marketing for me. When he posts stuff on behalf of Derek, that's him. The only time, sometimes he does tweets and Facebook announcements on my page with my name that I've approved of. So Derek does not speak for me. For that matter, nobody on planet Earth speaks for me, right? You want to know what I'm about? Talk to me. Even the people on the Yaron Brook Show Facebook page do not speak for me. There are tons of posts there that I would not have on if I was the one screening them. Right? All right. In Arab mythology, I'm just doing this because it's related somehow. Somebody says, you seem happy, excited talking about Middle East. Is it a sort of excitement, genuine interest? Is it due to your background in military time? It was because I spent 2001 to 2009 really studying up on it, reading everything I could, giving a bunch of lectures, doing all those courses. So there's a huge buildup of reservoir of knowledge. It's because I grew up there. I grew up there. I served in the military there. As I said, I was in Beirut. Beirut means something to me because I was there. I know the place. I have some, generally the Middle East is where I grew up. It's where my family still lives. I care about the place. Yes, I mean, it turns out I know a lot of Middle East history that people don't know because I grew up there, because I studied it after 9/11, because of all the stuff. And I'm excited and happy to share that with you. And it's such an unmitigated disaster and so bizarre and nuts that most people are just not even aware and don't know how completely insane it really is. In Arab mythology, genies and granting of wishes are dominant. Was this a precursor to Islam? Does the mythology have any cultural influences today? I really don't know, but I think that the mythology of granting wishes, I think is in all mythologies. You find something like a genie, something like granting of wishes, because I think it's a kind of a pre-reasoned, pre-rational way, wishing of wanting stuff, right? All right, here's a history question. Yaron, do you think Lebanon would be different if Bashar Gemayel was never assassinated? Your thoughts on the Maronites? So just to give you some background, Bashar Gemayel was going to be president of Lebanon in 1982, 82 or 83. I don't remember exactly. 82 or 83. He was a young, charismatic member of the Gemayel family, which was a very powerful Christian Maronite family in Lebanon. And he was about to become president, and he basically cut a deal with the Israelis to to support the Israeli invasion in 1982 of Lebanon. And he would support getting rid of the Palestinian threat to Israel. Unfortunately, one of the things he did was he allowed his Maronite troops to go into Sabra and Shatila and massacre Palestinian women and children. Blamed on Israel, blamed on Ariel Sharon, who was the defense minister at the time. But it really was Bashir Gemayel who authorized it and his Maronites who did it. And it turned into a political disaster. Anyway, before or just after, I can't remember, he was made president of Syria and was going to sign, of Lebanon, I don't know why I keep saying Syria, of Lebanon, and he was going to sign a peace deal with Israel. And then Israel would have retreated out of Lebanon, everything would have been peaceful, there would have been peace between Lebanon and Israel. He was assassinated. This is not unusual in Lebanese politics, the assassination, right? These kind of assassinations. And if he hadn't been assassinated, yeah, I think everything would have been different. If Derek is me on Reddit, as somebody's claiming, saying things that I've not authorized him to say, then bad on Derek, and I'll have to have a conversation with him. But my understanding is on Reddit basically promoting my stuff using verbiage that I've approved. So if he's using my name there to promote my stuff, then so be it. Who assassinated him? It was this. If I remember right, it was the Palestinians as retribution for Sabra and Shatila, and that just escalated the war. But then his brother tried to be president. His brother was president, but that didn't work out because brother didn't have the charisma. And of course, even the Christians, the Maronites, fight among themselves. The Maronites, there's the other forms of Christianity there, and so on. Anyway, it turned out to be a massive, unbelievable disaster. All right, last super chat question, then I'll shift to the other topic. Objectivist ethics, consequentialist, or type of virtue ethics? Well, neither. They're not consequentialist or type of virtue ethics. That is not an exhaustible, and I don't know how to categorize them in terms of what type of ethics they are. They are inductively, they are logically and inductively proven, if you will. And So there's an element of virtue ethics in there. There's an element of consequentialism in a sense that objectivism doesn't believe that the moral and the practical contradict each other, that they feed off of each other. But they're not consequentialists in that you're evaluated by the consequences. So how do I categorize them? I don't know. In the frameworks that you would put in modern, I mean, they're definitely inductively derived and logically established from, certain first principles, but inductively so. And, for example, the life is the standard of value has to be logically come to that conclusion. Right? Somebody says ethical naturalism. I don't know. Ask somebody like Greg Salmieri or Ankar Ghate when I have them on the show. I'm not the guy that is going to categorize philosophically the objectivist ethics. Okay, we're going to do this. Well, actually, I don't know if we'll do the whole thing. I think we're just going to I'm going to introduce this topic, although it was listed as number one. All right, let's do this. We're going to go here. There we go. Everybody see that? All right, so I posted this on Twitter. This is a list of threats to the United States of America. It's not an exhaustive list, and I haven't listed here ideologies. I've only listed movements, institutions, companies, things that people think of as threats to the United States of America. I listed this on Twitter, and I said, okay, I want people to rank them. And if you look, I think, let me see if I can get you this. Let me do this. One second. Yeah, you see there's some rankings. I took off Twitter that people ranked them in terms of what they think the ranking should be. So you've got TikTok. I thought that would be funny. China, big tech, all considered, all priorities for the Republicans and Democrats. TikTok, Schumer came out and said, we got to get rid of TikTok. TikTok obviously is a massive threat to American freedom. China, obviously, everybody thinks is a threat to American freedom. Big tech, everybody agrees. The whole Congress was attacking big tech. Universities, don't know if everybody agrees. Antifa, well, certainly the right thinks. Democratic Party, the right thinks that. Trump, left thinks that. Republican Party, left thinks that. Russia, not sure anybody thinks that. Or maybe everybody thinks that. Hard to tell. Certainly not Trump. Illegal immigrants, everybody in the right thinks they're a threat to America. Trade and outsourcing, well, the right thinks that's a threat to America. Wall Street, I think everybody thinks Wall Street is a threat to America. BLM, well, certainly the right thinks that. White supremacists, certainly the left thinks that. Religion, certainly I don't know if anybody thinks that. National conservatism, I think I'm the only person who thinks that's a threat. Crime, is it a threat to American freedom? Or did we always have it? Anyway, Biden, well, certainly a lot of you think is a major threat, and so do I, to America. Welfare state, threat to America or savior? I think, again, objectivists, maybe some free market people think it's a threat, but very few. Government schools, I don't know who thinks that's a threat. Islamists and Islam, this used to be number one. Number one, absolutely. It's faded a little bit. Now China, illegal immigrants, and TikTok have replaced it. Islam, I remember arguing with people. Islam is going to destroy America. The Muslims are going to take over. The number one threat, the number one danger. No, it turns out not so much. COVID, big threat. Federal Reserve, massive threat. So what do you guys think? Islam has lost its place as the number one threat. What do you think? What would you put number one? What would you put number one as the biggest long-term, not tomorrow, long-term threat to America? Somebody says 20. Government schools. I'd say it's up there. I wouldn't put it number one. Because what makes government schools? What makes government schools possible? Or put it this way, what makes government schools as bad as they are? Something is worse than government schools. He says number two is force. Four is number two. That's universities. And national conservatism is number three. All right. Not bad. I would not in that order, but close. William Swick says Democrats. Yeah, right. Brook says number 4, universities. All right. Kyle says 15. That's religion. Jonathan says religion is number 1. Steve says 19. Andrew says number 1 is democracy. Oh, democracy is a good one to add to the list. Let's add democracy. Democracy is certainly up there, but not number 1. Far from it. Property right violation, number 1. No, not even close. Democrats and Republicans. This is not my ranking. Not my ranking. This is just a list. Just made a list. So COVID is not number 22. Nothing here is this particular number. This is just a list, right? Just a list that I made. And, I'm open to ranking. Gil says number 4. Rock says property rights. That's right. I had that already. Derek is reminding me to like. Don't forget to like the show before you leave. We should have 200 likes right now, easily. If you guys who are watching the show like it. And then, of course, don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to use Super Chat here. Somebody says number 23, the Federal Reserve. No, not even close. Why do we have a Federal Reserve? Who led us to Federal Reserve? Public intellectuals. I had public intellectuals and took it off. Okay, I'm going to add public intellectuals. Public intellectual. Don't pay attention to my inability to type. Okay, public intellectuals. Okay, so we got 23. We got princess number 3, my king. I don't know what that is. Number 4. So 4. Number 6. 6 is what? Democratic Party. No way. Far down the list. Number 1. Universities number 1. 26, Green New Deal. I'll add Green New Deal, but yeah, it's not going to be very high on the list. Green New Deal. What else? Number 4. All right, we're getting a bit of a, I wouldn't say consensus, but a majority here. Politicians, just say Democrats and no, politicians are the product of the thing that is worse than politicians. The Federal Reserve is a product of the thing worse than politicians. Altruism is a set of ideas. We're not including ideas here. We're including institutions and movements. Number 4. Number 20. What's 20? Government schools. The government schools, I think, is number 2, not number 1. Irrationality, again, that's an idea. Certainly irrationality is number 1. But irrationality, mysticism, altruism, all the way up there. Number 26 is the biggest threat. Green New Deal. No, it's not. It's far from the biggest threat. Number 27, anime fury boys on TikTok. Well, I think that's covered by TikTok. James says 20, government schools. Government schools, not quite. All right, a few of you get where I'm going at least. Okay, to me, there's one number 1 that's overwhelming because it sets the standard for everything else. The number 1 enemy of freedom in the United States, the biggest threat to freedom long-term for the United States are the universities. The universities are number 1 by far. Because who trains the teachers who teach in the government schools? Who figures out the new math gibberish that they're taught? Who figures out Site C and rejects phonics? Who figures out all the nonsense, all the BS? Ooh, now I'm guilty of Trump derangement syndrome because I said the universities are the biggest threat. Wow. That's kind of weird. All right. Universities are the biggest threat in my view. Second, number 2, after universities, you'll see a theme here. Long-term threat to the United States, to freedom, and everything good in this country is government schools. Look, if you have under your control the government schools and the universities, you're done. You've got them till the age of 18. And it doesn't in the end matter if what ends the world is religion, or what ends the world is the Green New Deal, or what ends the world is national conservatism, or the Democratic Party, or Antifa. All of those will have been trained by the universities and the government schools. And they produce both left and right. They produce the extremes. And why do they produce the extreme left and extreme right, which are basically the same collectivistic, mystical, altruistic, non-thinking nihilists? Well, nihilists on the left and authoritarians on both. Why? Well, because what do the government schools and the universities teach us? The reality is not real. There is no absolutes. There are no principles. Not even in mathematics, it turns out, if you saw the 2 + 2 = 5 stuff. I mean, who comes up with 2 + 2 = 5? Doron asks, and yeah, universities do. If you cripple the human mind when it's young, when it's just coming out, when it's just engaging with the world and it's starting to try to think for itself, then what are you going to get? You're going to get disaster. So by far, education is the most important thing in the world. Politics is not number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Democratic Party is way down on the list, as is the Republican Party, as is Trump, as are the others, because they are products. Products of what? Products of government schools. The Fed is a product. Why haven't we abandoned the Fed given its total and absolute failures? Because we're not trained to think that way. We're trained to accept. We're trained to confuse. What else is a threat? And now there's some things that are just not threats, right? TikTok is not a threat. Illegal immigrants are not a threat. Trade is not a threat. Wall Street's not a threat. So let's take the things that are not threats. Well, italicize those. That's not a threat. Big tech is not a threat. Right? So we see what we're left with. Illegal immigrants is not a threat. And you'll see that it's interesting that all the things that are not a threat, Wall Street is not a threat, or BLM is a threat. So BLM, we shouldn't italicize. All the things that are not threats are the things our two political parties want to talk about, are the things they want to scare you over. Let's see. All right, everything else is a threat. All right. I think number 3 might be public intellectuals. The thinkers. Ooh, the courts is a good one. I don't know where I'd put them because I think the courts are still a place of sanity in America. Still, relatively speaking, still bad, relatively speaking. I think it's the intellectuals. It's universities, government schools, public intellectuals. It's the religion. It's the national conservatives. It's BLM. It's white supremacists. It's the ideas. I don't even think Antifa is that important. Antifa is probably under BLM because it's such a marginal group. In any other world, they'd be rid of easily. And there's no way Antifa goes mainstream. Right? And only then, only after you take all these groups, do you get to Trump, Biden, Republicans, Democrats. And only then do you get to the political issues like welfare state, Federal Reserve. And only at the very bottom do I put Islamists, China, Russia, because they're not a threat to the United States. The real threat to freedom in America is America. The real threat to freedom in America is what they teach at our universities. The real threat to America is not cybersecurity. The real threat to America are the ideas, the egalitarianism, the altruism, the collectivism, the mysticism, the postmodernism. And the fact that our schools, our government schools, don't teach kids to think, don't teach kids math, don't teach kids English, don't teach kids literature. That's what's destroying America. It's that rot from within that is ideological, that is philosophical, that is pervaded by the intellectuals. The fact is, it is the intellectuals that are destroying America. The intellectual elite, both left and right. whether at the New York Times, Paul Krugman's of the world, or at the American Conservative Magazine, or the various different new right magazines. The battle for America is not a political battle. It's not about Republicans or Democrats. They're just pawns in the game. The real influencers, the real determinants of the fate of this country, the real determinants of the future of this country, of the shape this country takes, of the ideas this country adopts, are the intellectuals. That's why the battle is an intellectual, philosophical battle. That's why the most important voices we have are the intellectual voices. It's why you guys should go and support the Einman Institute. You should support Don Watkins. You should support Alex Epstein. You should support the intellectuals, the public intellectuals working out there to reverse these trends. You should support Greg Salamieri at his new position at the University of Texas, Tara Smith, and any intellectuals out there who is speaking out, who is working against the ideas that are destroying this country. That is the battle. That is the war. That is everything. Screw politics. Forget about it. You take all that time you devote to defending Trump or attacking Biden or reverse or whatever, and spend it instead on defending ideas, on attacking ideas. Yeah, Sam Harris counts. Sam is a public intellectual who, while does some good, does some bad. And the bad he does is big time because he undermines free will, which is about the worst thing you can undermine, ever. So a big reason for me to do this is just to illustrate at least my view that the real enemy here is our ideas. And if you want to fight for ideas. Fight at the level of ideas. Stop this obsession. The obsession with politics. So many of you disagree with me on Trump. Fine, who cares? I know there are a lot of people who disagree with me on Trump. But if you care about the future of this country, you've got to fight his bad ideas. Even if you think he's better than Biden, you'll vote for him no matter what. Great. Do that. Vote for Trump. But fight his bad ideas. Don't be apologists for him. And then promote good ideas. Thank you, Lester. Promote great ideas. Promote the ideas of reason, of egoism, of individual rights, of individualism, of capitalism. Don't spend all your time attacking Biden and the left unless you're promoting something good, something positive, something worthwhile. The battle is an intellectual battle, a philosophical battle, ideological battle. You will lose if you obsess about politics. Politics doesn't matter. It doesn't matter who gets elected long term. Well, it matters, but it doesn't matter that much. What matters are the ideas that become prevalent in this country. And those of you who support this show, don't support it because of my ability to sway the vote one way or the other. You support this show. You support this show because you know that I promote your ideas. I promote your philosophy. And I spend my time talking about philosophical ideas. Even in the discussion of Lebanon, I'm giving you facts, history, all in the context of freedom is good. What they're doing in Lebanon is a disaster because it's anti-freedom. Wow, how did Ned Stark enter the conversation in the chat? So if you care about the future of this country and you think objectivism is on the right path, the ideas are the right ideas, then promote those of us, help those of us who are speaking out for it, and you need to pick up the mantle and support it and advocate for it yourself. That's how we'll change the world. You will change the world. You will change the world by speaking truth, by speaking truth to power, and that power is not political. That power is the power of the intellectuals, of the writers, of the speakers, of the podcasters, of the tweeters, of the people out there who are actually advocating for bad, evil, destructive ideas. Okay, I should end the show right there because that was a good end. But I've got 3 Super Chat questions I'm going to get to quickly. When you change your mind about something, how long does it take for your emotional response to follow? Are there ways, of speeding up the process? I mean, that really depends. That really depends. Thank you, Alex. That really depends on what I'm changing my mind about, how big of an issue. The bigger the issue, the more I was invested in the previous position, the longer it takes. And the way to speed it up is to think about it and to integrate it, to show why the new conclusion is right by integrating it into all the other elements that you know are true. And work on that. Work on those integrations. It is those integrations that will ultimately shape your emotions. Jack says, a salient quote from a tyrant. Quote, he alone who knows the youth gains the future. Who owns the youth. He alone who owns the youth gains the future. That's right. That's Adolf Hitler. But that could be a Jesuit priest could do the same thing, right? Yeah, we need a big Super Chat contribution to make this show, worthwhile, right? We need like a nice $100 contribution. Yaron, if I give your first $1,000 Super Chat donation, can I email you about picking a video topic for you to cover subject to your approval? Absolutely. Absolutely. You get to choose the topic on my show, unless it's something completely wacky that I don't want to do. But within reason, you get to choose a topic for my show if you do a $1,000 Super Chat question, and you can Super Chat donation, and you can email me at yaron@yaronbrookshow.com. Welfare state plus public schools is a deadly combination. Yes, it is. But public schools plus mysticism is even deadlier. Public schools plus subjectivism is even deadlier. Public schools plus altruism is deadlier. That leads to the welfare state. Public schools plus anything. Any bad idea is deadly. Welfare state is just a product of those bad ideas. Product of those ideas. All right, $30. That's Canadian, though. It's not quite 30. You once did a show on Patrick Ben-David. Have you thought about doing another show with him? Yeah, I'd love to. But I haven't heard from him. I'll try to contact him again, see if he's interested in doing another show. It's up to him. That's the thing. I'm open to doing shows with anybody. I'm doing a show this week with a big Bitcoin podcast. Big Bitcoin podcast I'm taping tomorrow. It'll air on Friday. I'll put it up on my channel on Sunday. And I'm hoping to get a lot of followers from that, a lot of subscribers from that, because he's got a huge following, hundreds of thousands, I think. So A. Campbell, I said yes. Where is it? All right. Skylar has come through with one of the whale contributions. Thank you. There's $100 from Skylar. Thank you, Skylar. I can't remember his name. Paul something. I'll look it up in a second. Yes, the Catholic said, give me kids till the age of 7 and they're mine for life. The show is, let me see if I've got it written down. Peter McCormack, WBD, Peter McCormack. That'll be on Friday. We're not talking Bitcoin, though. We're not talking Bitcoin. We're talking political philosophy. Maybe we'll talk a little bit about Bitcoin, but mostly political philosophy. That should be a good show. He seems like a genuinely interested guy. All right. Show. Here comes in two $500 max. Okay, but all right, before I end the show, and then it'll be gone. It'll be done. All right. Campbell is getting his Super Chat credentials in there. All right, and then you'll email me a video topic, and we will do it. This is great. Thank you. This is going to be like a record-breaking Super Chat month because because we had the Icelandic gentleman, Simon, the other day give. It turned out after the fees and everything and the foreign currency transactions and everything, I think it turned out that the whole show was like $750. There's David. Wow. Thank you, David. Really appreciate it. That is fantastic. This is an amazing super chat, particularly when Campbell comes through. He's trying to donate and says, try again tomorrow? Really? Really? I wonder if there's like a limit after like an hour and a half or something. Try to do 100. I'll count it towards 1,000, I promise. Try to do 100 right now and see what happens. Just to see if it'll go through. Because I wonder if there's some limitation after like an hour and a half. Because that show on the 30th of June, they never processed. Or they processed some of them, but they deny it's happened. And it's impossible to get through to YouTube to get anything. So those of you who contributed on the 30th of June, on the show on the 30th of June, you might want to reverse the transaction on your credit card if you can, and if it's not too much of a hassle. Because I don't think YouTube's not passing the money on to me. And it was like $300+. They gave me 50 of the 350 because they claimed that the transactions didn't go through. And something broke on their side. A limit on the donate giver or donation receiver. I don't have a limit. I'll take anything. There's some people I wouldn't take the money from. What's my opinion of Seinfeld? That's a good question. I did not like Seinfeld. Too neurotic for me. Too culturally Jewish for me. I don't know. There's something neurotic about it. And other members of my family loved it, but I found it too. I don't know. I couldn't tolerate it. All right. Campbell will have to do it. Tomorrow. We'll have to do it tomorrow because unless there are other super chat questions that I can answer, I'm running out of fumes here. Running on fumes, and the fumes are running out. The gas is already gone. The fumes are about to go. I did not like Seinfeld, and is that why Alex left AOA? You'll have to ask Alex. I don't know. All right. 400 works. Okay, we're on the way. Even if you can do it today, we'll count anything you do today towards 1,000. And we can wrap this up tomorrow. But see if you can do another 400 and see if that'll go. This is amazing, A. Campbell. In the email, maybe you'll tell me what the A stands for. This is amazing. This kind of support is going to keep us going, making it rain. Jonathan, they're making it, yeah. I mean, he's a rainmaker, that's right. All right, Valdrin is giving you the math, right? This is not new math. It's not 2 + 2 = 5. It's 400 + 400 + 200 = 1,000. All right. Actually, maybe 2 + 2 does equal 5 in this case. No, that would be wrong. That would be bad. 2 + 2 = 3 would be better, right? Because then he'd have to give more in order to get to 1,000. I'm trying to do the new math in my head, and it's very difficult. All right, I think there's a 500 max. All right, let's do the 400 here. Tomorrow, you'll do, not tomorrow, Thursday. I'll be on tomorrow. I'll tell you what the show is going to be, the topic's going to be on Thursday. The topic on the show is going to be Hiroshima and Nagasaki. So Thursday will be 75 years exactly for the dropping of the bomb on Hiroshima. And then 2 days later on Nagasaki. So we're going to talk about why the bombs were dropped, the morality of dropping the bombs, the attitudes today, why there are no Japanese suicide bombers trying to kill Americans because of how horrible we behaved towards them in World War II. We'll talk about all of that on Thursday. So Thursday's topic, primary topic, main topic, will be 75 years to Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Campbell's saying, since I don't like Seinfeld, he's not sure he's going to pony up the other 600. Now I regret not liking Seinfeld. What can I say? It has real consequences, I guess, not liking Seinfeld. All right. Thanks, everybody. Campbell, you've got my email, so you can email me the topic. We can start discussing it. And the show on Thursday, you can just go to my, we can probably figure out a way for you to just go to my Facebook page or PayPal me $600. So PayPal is better. PayPal me $600 and we can settle it that way. All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a great rest of your week. I will talk to you again on Thursday and then on the weekend. Bye, everybody.